What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, one of the things that the NBA family had been blessed with for so many decades was the fact that so many of its legends have been blessed with longevity. That's not something that is always guaranteed. Jackie Robinson, Babe Ruth, Arturo Gotti, they were not blessed with longevity. Rocky Marciano, not blessed with longevity. Roberto Clemente, not blessed with longevity. But the NBA family had been blessed with that for the most part. If you look at the 1997 All Star game when the 50 greatest NBA players stood up, 49 of the 50 were still alive. Only Pete Maravich had passed away prematurely back in January '88 at the age of 40. But since then, the floodgates have opened up. Wilt Chamberlain, a couple of years later, Dave DeBusschere in 2003, George Yardley, I think in 2003 or 2004. Paul Arizin, December 2006. Dennis Johnson, I think it was in February 2007. And when you specifically look at the Bill Russell Celtics, they have slowly begun to fade away. Whether you're talking about Bill Sharman, or whether you're talking about Frank Ramsey, the first official sixth man of the NBA, he created that role. His successor, and who's going to become one of the great Boston Celtics of all time, John Havlicek. And then, of course, we've lost Tom Heinsohn. And then I think it was last Christmas when we lost Casey Jones, one of the great coaches, as well as one of the great defensive players of the 1960s. And word came last night that we lost Sam Jones. Sam Jones was more than just 10 championships. Um, if you know anything about Sam Jones, you know that he was the third greatest shooting guard in the 1960s behind only Oscar Robertson and Jerry West. I should say guards. He was the third greatest guard in the 1960s. He only played 12 years in the NBA, 1957 and 1969. He came out of NCC, North Carolina, I believe it was North Carolina Central. Um, but one thing is very true. Bill Russell never won a championship without Sam Jones being out there on his team. One of the things I've always said about Sam Jones, he averaged close to 18 points a game in his career, but he could have scored a lot more points on a bad team. But he played within the system, and he forsaked his numbers, his stats for the betterment of the team. In that aspect, he had the mentality of a Tim Duncan, the mentality of a Manu Ginobili, of a Tony Parker, of a David Robinson. Is that he sacrificed his numbers for the betterment of the team. Because believe you me, had he played on a team like the Chicago Bulls or, you know, the Chicago Packers or one of those horrible teams back then in the 1960s, he could have averaged 27, 28, 29 points a game. But in a lot of those battles that they had against Wilt Chamberlain's Warriors teams or even the Lakers or anybody, it was Sam Jones that was the difference maker. It was the backcourt that really made the difference. Yes, Bill Russell's defense slowed Wilt Chamberlain down most nights, but it was the fact that the Warriors just had no answer for the Sam Jones, Casey Jones backcourt or the Sam Jones, Bob Cousy backcourt. They had no answer for them. Sam Jones was considered, even with Jerry West, the greatest clutch player in the game in the 1960s. I remember hearing Bill Russell say, I think it was something to the effect of 7 times in the playoffs, the Boston Celtics needed Sam Jones to hit a clutch shot in order to tie the game or win. And all 7 times, Sam Jones delivered. He was the master of the bank shot. He was considered by some the game's best shooter. He was nicknamed the shooter. And by all accounts, he was a great guy, a great teammate. And the Celtics dynasty didn't just end with Bill Russell's retirement. It ended when Sam Jones retired that same season. And in the playoffs, which is a mark of a great player, Sam Jones rose his level of play like the champion that he was. Sam Jones was blessed with longevity. Sam Jones was born in the midst of the Great Depression and lived to see the technological age that is 2021. He lived for 88 years, but last night his time came. Um, we're losing them. We're losing these guys, and that is why a lot of times I'm so adamant in defending the history of the NBA because increasingly they're no longer here to defend their era. They're voiceless, so they need a voice. And if I have to be the voice for the voiceless, so be it. But we lost another voice. Another voice fell silent last night. Sam Jones passed away at the age of 88. May he rest in peace.